Hello, Genies. Before we get started, Rich and I want to let you in on some even more exciting updates for our Patreon subscribers.
As you know, Patreon is a site where listeners can pledge a small monthly amount, either $5 or $10, to support the cost of bringing you your favorite podcast. All patrons get early access to new CutOff Jeans episodes before they're released to the public.
But the most exciting new perk is that all of our patrons will be able to listen to an exclusive bonus episode of the podcast every other week. Topics include personal stories that I'm not ready to share publicly, conversations with family and friends.
And sometimes we'll devote an entire episode to other subjects we love, like musical theater or classic television.
Rich and I enjoy bringing you the CutOff Jeans podcast, and it would mean so much if you would consider supporting our labor of love.
Just go to patreon.com/cutoffjeanspodcast.
Thank you so much, my Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Jeans, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and producer of this podcast. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Richard.
So I've been working on a website for that musical that I wrote, Love Stings, that went up last summer, and it's finally live. Now, I am not a web designer, but I had fun doing this. You know,
what did you do it on?
Weebly is like that. You know, they had a template, and then I put some pictures up, and then I got permission to use some of the video from the live show, and so I put together a little like montage. From the show on the front page. So if anybody's interested in seeing
is that what it's for? Is it for potential theaters who might want to
definitely. That is exactly what it is for. It is to promote further productions of the show, because now that it's had its premiere, now it can go and play elsewhere in family-friendly theaters. So
it's proven itself.
Yeah.
It's proof of concept has been done.
So guys, if you want to take a look, it's lovestingsmusical.com, and just go there and watch the video and let me know what you think. And if you guys know any theaters that might be interested in your area, just have them contact me through the website.
How big of a cast is it?
6 actors playing 7 roles.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like an hour and a half, no intermission. It's very easy to produce, and it's just so much fun. And you'll see when you watch the little 1-minute teaser video, it's just it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Hey, put a link to it on the Facebook page.
Great. What's going on with you, Julie?
Well, it's Wednesday, and I have not had to cheat on the LA Times crossword puzzle yet. So that's good.
Does the LA Times have a daily crossword?
Yes, they do. Oh. So my husband subscribes to the LA Times. Yeah. So he decided that he was going to download and print the daily Sudoku for himself and the crossword for me.
I see.
So we have a new tradition in our household where we get up and he prints them up, and we sit at the dining room table and have our coffee, and he does the Sudoku and I do the crossword. Like a little old couple.
No, but it's fun, and I have to say, it will keeping your mind active as you get older. As we get older, is so important, because I remember my dad used to do crosswords all the time, and when he stopped, I saw a decline.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting.
And I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. Like, I don't know whether he stopped doing them because he couldn't do them anymore, or vice versa. But I know that while he was doing them, he was very sharp.
You know, and I think it keeps your mind sharp too. Yeah, so basically I'm keeping score by what day I have to start cheating.
So what's happening in DNA news?
Let's keep it light for a start. So listener Sydney Schulman Levesque posted an ad that's on eBay for a lock of hair that came from King George III.
Oh my God.
It was cut from 1814. I'm going to click on the ad so that we can. Okay, King George III lock of hair. This is one of 3 known strands of King George's hair in the world. This hair is contained in 2 envelopes, one which reads His Majesty hair cut off July 30th, 1814 on one side, and for Mrs. Fulton with Mrs. Bootle Wilbraham's kind remembrances November 23rd, 1825. The inner envelope reads, again, His Majesty's hair cut off July 30th, 1814. So Mrs. Mary Elizabeth Nee Taylor, Bootle Wilbraham, whose wax seal is featured on one of the envelopes with her initials, MEB, was the sister of Sir Herbert Taylor, personal secretary of King George III for many years. She was the wife of Edward Bootle Wilbraham, 1st Baron Skelmersdale, and resided at Latham House in Lancashire, UK. This piece was sold by the 3rd Earl of Latham in 1919. The lock of hair undoubtedly came directly from her brother, who worked for the king. There is a sister lock of hair similar to this one preserved in the archives of the London Museum. Its envelope reads, Hair of His late Majesty King George III, received from Sir H. Taylor, 27 January 1827. It has the exact same handwriting on the envelope as this one. The hair preserved at the London Museum underwent scientific tests in 2005 under the direction of Professor Martin Warren. In his published findings, it was discovered that the hair contained high concentrations of arsenic. Likely the cause of King George's madness, because as in the movie.
I don't remember them showing this scene in The Madness of King George, the movie. I don't remember the scene where he cuts out his hair and puts it in an envelope. Maybe that scene was left on the cutting room floor.
Ow! He's back, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm sorry. I had to do it.
I love how you crack yourself up. Anyway, how much do you think this lock of hair is going for?
You know what? I am sure somebody is willing to pay thousands of dollars for this.
Tried $9,500.
Oh, well, that is thousands.
Yes, it is. You can make an offer though. But they're asking $9,500.
I don't get it. I know that it's sort of been traditional for like a young girl to give a lock of hair to her intended boyfriend.
Yeah, way back in the olden days.
Back in the olden days. But what is this with the hair of the king?
Okay, well, Sydney mentioned, because it's the king, Sydney mentioned that she would like to see if maybe any DNA can be extracted from it and uploaded to GEDmatch.
That's interesting.
And traditionally, and in fact, I just looked up hair analysis, it says for DNA testing, the hair must include the root. That is what is believed, especially in law enforcement situations. But we've spoken about these companies before, that there are companies who, if it's a good sample of hair, they can extract mitochondrial DNA from the hair without the root.
Yeah, for a price.
So it can be done for a pretty price, probably more than $9,500.
And then you add that to the $9,500 you paid for the lock of hair, only to find out maybe it's a fake.
Yeah, it's doll hair, everyone.
It's horse hair. Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, DNA is making leaps and bounds every day. So I wouldn't be surprised if it, gets easier and easier to do it from rootless hair. So.
Well, I would think that it belongs in a museum or belongs to the royal family.
One of them is in the museum.
I see.
And so it was sold by the owner, the person it was given to in 1919, or a relative of the person that was given to.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would be interested in seeing if that goes anywhere. I always wonder about the royal family, about their stance on DNA testing.
Yeah.
Because it's a pretty valuable thing to get a hold of, especially when it comes to things like inherited royalty, if you will.
My guess is that they don't want it to be done to anyone in their family.
Right. But remember, the Duke of Queen Elizabeth's husband, who died just before her, the Duke,
Prince
who
Philip?
was he? Yeah, Prince Philip. He provided his DNA to identify his cousin, his identical cousin, who was one of the Russian family that was murdered.
Identical cousin? Maybe it was the Duke you were thinking of was Patty Duke. Identical cousins all the way.
Oh, look at what you did. That's so good, Richard. You were able to pull the word Duke in there.
Well, you said identical cousins. I mean,
I know, but okay. If you see it, look at a picture of the prince that was killed, or anyway.
So anyway,
I'll
Prince
put it
Philip,
on the Facebook page. They looked very much alike.
Prince Philip, the Duke of Patty,
The Duke of Patty.
has an identical cousin
The
as
Duke
well.
of Patty who adored hot dogs. And
They made him lose control.
yes, exactly. They're a wild duet. So only the old people know what we're talking about now. Identical cousin. All right. So moving on from that wacky story.
It is wacky.
It is wacky, right? Okay, let's get a little more serious. Let's talk about international adoption and interracial adoption and fraud. Richard and Jennifer Girth adopted a boy from Uganda, hoping to offer him a loving home. Things didn't work out the way they planned. They obtained guardianship of a boy from Uganda in 2015. Ugandan adoption officials said the boy, Charles, was 7 years old and that his biological mother could not be found. In 2018, the family's pediatrician noticed that Charles' listed age didn't match his body's development. He was at least 4 years older than what the family had been told. He was a teenager, 14, not 10. Investigators found Charles's mother, Farida, in 2019, and she had not consented to Charles' adoption. He had just disappeared and she didn't know where he was.
Oh, no.
His biological father had lied and said that she was dead or that he hadn't seen her in years, and he consented to his adoption.
Oh, God. This is awful.
I know. What's sad is that this is very common. The family's lawyer says a lot of red flags have come up since finding out Charlie's true history. When a child has two living parents in Uganda, they are not eligible for adoption. Jennifer says the whole idea of adopting someone and thinking they're going to make it better because they're coming here needs to be debunked, because that is not the way it is. The lawyers said some adoption agencies present themselves as these saviors who just want to help children that don't have families, but oftentimes that's not the case. They are just there to make money off of selling these children. There has been a recent shutdown of Ugandan adoptions, not for this case, because there's been many others and many other cases of fraud. Jennifer doesn't hesitate to say that this is human trafficking. It's not for the betterment of children. It's for profit. Ugh. Charles says, the boy, my thing is that I just want to be with my family. That's all I want, is to see my brother and sister. So he remembers his brother and sister. Jennifer said, yes. I mean, he's been here like 5 years.
Yeah.
But God,
so what did he say? I wonder what the kid said when he got here. Like, I am not, I'm not the age they said I am. And
who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I bet he didn't speak English when he came here. So, really probably took him a long time to know what was going on.
Oh, the poor kid,
Yeah. Yeah, Jennifer's promise to him is that she'll do whatever she can to get him back to his mom. She wants him to be happy. It's not easy. She's talked to people in D.C. over the last couple of years, and nobody really cares. Nobody wants to help. This was a couple years ago. But in October 2021, days after receiving Charles's updated passport with his corrected date of birth, she booked tickets to Uganda, and Charles was finally reunited with his mother and siblings.
Wow.
So, yay, but boo.
Heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking, and it happens so much. People get really tense when you start describing adoption as human trafficking. But once money gets exchanged and fraud happens, it's nothing else but human trafficking. As far as I'm concerned,
you're not looking out for the kid's best
interest. Welfare. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And family preservation.
So
and what
I wonder if that mother had been looking for him. I mean, what was her story? The original birth mother of the boy,
I don't know. It's not. I haven't found anything about it. The original story was in USA Today, though, so there might be more about it now.
Yeah. Well,
but that's where I got it. I'll put a link to it on the Facebook page.
wow,
too.
that is something else.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, between our very light story at the beginning and then this
And
story,
our super heavy story. We've really balanced it out, I think.
I think we should take a break.
Good idea.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
All right, we're back, and let's talk about something that has just in the last couple days shown up on social media. I won't say it's in the news because you'll see. There is a Polish woman who on social media is claiming to be Madeleine McCann, who was the little British girl who was kidnapped from her hotel room in Portugal in 2007 at a Portuguese resort. They've been looking for her ever since, and it's just those poor parents have been through hell. So this woman, she believes that she's 21 or was told that she's 21 now, whereas Madeleine would be 19, I think. But her name is Julia Wendell. She also goes by a couple of other aliases, which is a bit of a red flag situation. But she says that she doesn't remember anything from her childhood, from being less than 3 years old, which is not that uncommon. I mean, I have a lot of memories from before I was 3 years old, but I think I'm abnormal. My husband doesn't remember anything from being under 7, frankly. What about you?
I can't put a year on it. I do remember certain things, and I don't know how old I was. I just know I was very young, but I don't have a lot of memories from age 3. I think I have little snapshots.
I have very specific memories from before I could walk.
Wow.
We've talked about that before. But anyway,
Yes,
so this girl, she believes, and I'll tell you why she thinks that and what she is presenting as evidence. This week, Wendell claimed that after hearing her social media cries, the McCann parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, have asked her to take a DNA test. But they've not spoken publicly about it. Neither have London's Metropolitan Police, who are still investigating McCann's disappearance. So nobody official has commented on anything. The crux of her proof is regarding physical resemblance that revolves around McCann's rare eye disorder, one Wendell claims to share, at least in pictures. When McCann went missing, a coloboma abnormality in her right eye was used as a major identifying feature. A coloboma is a hole in the structure of the eye that often causes a visible tear or hole. So if you look at her eye, there's it has color around the iris, but there is a gap, like a black gap.
Okay.
And she has this too, she says. I mean, and you can see it in pictures if they haven't been doctored, but it's not uncommon. I mean, it's rare, but not so unusual. It wouldn't be a coincidence. She claims she also has the same dimple as McCann and several similarly located moles and freckles. In side-by-side childhood photos of her and McCann, Wendell even said that they had similar teeth gapping. So I looked at the pictures that she posted, and without those other things, the dimples and the moles and the eye thing, I don't see a resemblance.
Well, how old was she? How old was the girl when she was kidnapped?
She was 3.
She was 3. Okay.
Yes.
This girl is 21 now, or she claims to be 21?
But Madeleine would be 19, but
19. All right.
Yeah, she thinks she's 21, but she doesn't know.
Yeah. That's tough. I'm looking at a picture right now in my room here. I've got a picture on the wall from I was probably in my early 30s, and then another picture when I was with my brother, and we look like we're probably 2 or 3.
Yep.
And I would not necessarily, from looking at them, think it's the same person. I mean, I know it is. But
you can't tell. I mean, pictures do not tell you everything. It's the DNA that tells you everything.
Right.
And that's the next thing. So I found her on Instagram, and because she keeps saying, "Help me get a DNA test. Help me have them ask for, or help me get in touch with them and see if we can do DNA tests. And the fact is, and she lives in Germany. She's Polish, but she lives in Germany. And ancestry DNA is a thing in Germany.
Right.
So they don't need to test. She can get a consumer ancestry DNA test, and any genetic genealogist worth their salt can figure out if she is related to the McCanns.
I see.
And I don't, and so I said that. I wrote her a message. I haven't heard from her. But I don't, saying, have you done an ancestry DNA test? This is a great place to start to see even if you're in the ballpark. You know what I mean? Because it's very easy to do, and it's legal. And someone like me can, depending on what matches she has,
right,
could maybe help her or hinder her. But
and don't you think? I mean, I don't know, but wouldn't you think that the parents at this day and age might have also done a DNA test in hopes that they could find?
I'm sure they would have to have, wouldn't they?
I guess, unless they just said we have to put it behind us, and you know.
No, I bet their DNA is all over the place.
Yeah, I
mean, wouldn't you
would.
think?
I
yes,
would.
Absolutely. I would do everything I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if the girl doesn't know that she was kidnapped, and she took a DNA test, just like a lot of people do, just for fun or whatever, she might discover this where the people who took her would not tell her. You know,
right.
truth.
And that's another thing that she mentioned. I don't have it here, but she said that she is estranged from her parents and they refuse to give her her birth certificate and tell her anything about her early childhood. And so there's obviously something going on.
Is not enough.
Oh, of course not. Yeah. Of course not. But if that is true, I can see why she might be suspicious. Yeah. I can see how she might have gotten to that place. And guess what? Maybe it's true. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be true.
I feel like if there were merit to this, it would have kind of been fast tracked at this point.
Yeah, and why? I just question what anyone would have to gain from coming forward with this if it were not true.
Attention.
Yeah.
People do it all the time.
It's sad.
All the time.
Well, I'll be interested to hear if there's any further.
Me too. I'll let you know if she ever responds to me. All right. So, the kids do this thing called Reddit, where they pose questions, and it's posed as, "Am I the a-hole?" Because something that they're going through. People are making them feel bad about it, but they don't think they don't think they're the a-hole. They think the people are accusing her of being an a-hole or an a-hole.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to read you her story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to be in a child's life that I gave birth to? She started out her story with some important background. Her best friend couldn't have children. The risk of her death was too high, and she was already having fertility problems. So long story short, she agreed to be her family's surrogate, mostly due to the fact that she was her best friend. Mm-hmm. She mentions she cannot stand the best friend's husband, though. And the only reason she did it was for her. So she became pregnant with their child and everything went smoothly. I'm going to assume that it was the best friend's egg and the husband's sperm. So she was the incubator. Right. I would assume. We don't know for sure though, because I would have different feelings regarding.
Right. Because a surrogate sort of, doesn't that assume that you're carrying someone else's biological child? It
does, though there is proof that a surrogate or a child does indeed in utero have certain bonding connections with the mother who is carrying it. Then the mother forever carries some of the DNA of that child in her blood or central nervous system. I don't know where. Okay. But anyway, there was a contract in place that she wouldn't be financially responsible for the kid and so on, as a pretty standard contract, of course. Things went badly recently, though. That was 6 years ago, and her best friend recently died.
Oh, no.
Yes. The husband has been calling her and saying that she should step up as the kid's mother because she did give birth to her. He keeps calling that I need to be in his daughter's life. After declining multiple times, I finally told him that kid isn't mine, even though I gave birth to her, that I have no obligation to do jack squat, and that I'm not, it's pretty raw, and that I'm not going to replace my best friend as her mother. At wit's end, she asked for the internet's judgment. He called me an a-hole and is going to get his lawyer involved.
This whole thing about like I don't need to do jack squat isn't really helping her case, is it?
She didn't say the word squat, by the way. I cleaned that up.
Okay.
Yeah, so she doesn't sound like a really nice person, frankly. All right, I'm going to give you my take.
Okay, please.
About this whole tawdry situation. I think, yes, on its face, if she were a complete stranger and was just a vessel, if you will, which is a very crude way of referring to it.
No, but I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Or an incubator. I don't think, and I don't think she still, I don't think she certainly doesn't have any legal responsibility, of course,
Right.
because there was already a contract. And she obviously doesn't want to be a mother. So yes, no, she doesn't have to be the mother to this child. I think if she were a kind person, she would make herself available to the child because A, she was her mother's best friend and she can provide stuff about her mother that the father obviously can't. And she obviously was close enough to her that she incubated her in her body.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. I don't understand how somebody can be so. I mean, I get that she hates the dad, and he sounds like a piece of work himself. It sounds like he doesn't want to parent the child and is just looking for somebody else to parent his child. You know what I'm saying?
I totally agree with everything you've said. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I would have said the same thing. And honestly, I put more weight on the fact that she was the mother's best friend than
too.
I do on the fact that she carried the baby in her body. Because I feel
Sure.
like, you know, like you said, if she had just been a stranger that they paid or to carry the baby, you know, it would be, of course.
It would be a no-brainer.
Yeah,
Right.
no-brainer.
Yeah.
But the fact is that she had such a close relationship that she would call her best friend. I mean,
Right.
Lord knows women who are best friends of a mother who died would be in the child's life.
Yes.
Just, you know, not even as a mother,
That's
but
just human.
yeah, as your mother's, you know, so you can say, I knew your mother and
Right.
tell
The
you
kid
all
is
about.
6.
Yeah.
I mean, that poor child. Once again, all of these debates about adoption and about donor conception and all of this stuff, everybody has very strong feelings about it all the time, completely negating anything that the person that was created from this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
We are the last people to have our voices heard, and everybody else, we're the ones who has to make everybody else feel okay about their decisions.
I would think that the child would be happy to know someone who was close to her mother.
Of course.
And I also question her putting it on Reddit and saying, am I the a-hole? Like, I don't know. That seems like
Well,
the
and
wrong
that's a
place
whole other
to
thing.
go.
Well, let me just say, there is no proof that any of this is true.
True. Yeah, I know, right?
Because, guys, social media is nothing on social media is based on fact. So people can say whatever they want to.
We just talked about this with the McCann child.
Exactly.
You know, like it could just be for attention.
Attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or to stir the pot, you know.
Exactly. And give people that have podcasts something else to talk about.
So I guess you're right. I think the verdict is, yes, legally you have there's no reason that you need to do anything.
Legally, you're not the a-hole. As a human, you're an a-hole.
Yep. There you go.
How about that?
You've heard it from Julie and Rich. Let's take a break, Julie.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Jeans with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/Cut Off Jeans podcast. Now, back to the program.
All right, it is story time. Here is the first part of my conversation with donor-conceived person and author Peter J. Bonney. He has written a book called Uprooted, let me see, Uprooted, Family Trauma, Unknown Origins, and the Secretive History of Artificial Insemination. And we had a wonderful conversation about his book. I have read his book. It's spectacular. So let's go ahead and listen to the first part of our conversation.
Great. Let's listen in.
Hi, everybody. I have on the line Peter J. Bonney, who is the award-winning author of the book, the bestseller, Uprooted, Family Trauma, Unknown Origins, and the Secretive History of Artificial Insemination. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Julie. Happy to be here.
I'm so glad we finally got together.
Oh, no problem at all. You know, I've been a CEO for a long time, and when I retired, I was fending for myself, had no executive assistant to do anything for me, so I'm a total disaster.
Oh, okay. So it's actually good that we're not talking until now, because I actually finished the book last night. Beautifully written, by the way.
Thank
Your
you.
level of research is astounding.
Yeah, it took me 22 years.
Well, it's beautifully done, and I learned things I've never heard before, and I've been doing this for a while. So just a beautifully written book, and thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so I would love for the listeners to hear what the book is all about.
Sure. I was compelled to put my whole journey in a book that was published in last January. To heal, I just had to reveal everything that I had learned about myself, as well as the whole evolution of the science that enabled my conception in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that there were three things that enabled me to be the person I had become. I had a disruptive childhood, a sick dad. There was a lot of moving, several schools, many states. And that maybe helped my adaptability.
Mm-hmm.
I was in combat as a special operations team leader in Vietnam, very profound experience.
Right. Thank you for your service, by the way.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And let's say that helped contribute to my collaborative leadership style.
Yep.
And certainly a college education opened more doors of opportunity for me that I never really expected. So I always took my DNA for granted.
Yeah.
So here it was in 1995, 20-something years ago. My then 75-year-old mother had open heart surgery and then a post-operative stroke. And all of the locks that guarded her secret no longer worked. And she spilled the beans that my dad wasn't biological. I was conceived through artificial insemination with an anonymous sperm donor. So I always took my DNA for granted. But now at 49 years old, I had to poke myself.
Yeah.
I was still the same person, but everything really had changed for me.
Did you believe it at first when you first heard it?
I did, Julie. There was always something in my head that I didn't fit for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only fair complexion person in an Italian family. I had my dad's northern Italian blue eyes, but fair skin, easy sunburn. As my academic achievements and then my life's achievements occurred, members of my family were somewhat intimidated by that. I didn't understand that, but on both sides, really. So I always felt a little different.
Right.
So it did not surprise me, but it was a huge surprise all at the same time. I was misattributed. I never heard that word before.
Mm-hmm. That was a new one for me, too.
Well, I knew other miswords,
Yeah.
Misunderstood,
Misconstrued.
whatever, misconstrued, misconceived, but never misattributed. My DNA and my birth certificate just didn't jive.
Mm-hmm.
Something was askew. For me, it was in my paternal end, my dad.
Right.
But a real huge, confusing range of emotions and conflicting. How can you feel deceived and relieved and shame and pride all at the same time?
Yeah.
How do you feel empty and fulfilled? How do you feel grief and exhilarated, happy, sad, angry, joyous? It was really confusing.
It's
I wasn't
confusing.
Northern Italian.
Okay.
was, but my birth certificate was a hoax.
Right.
It was a fraud. Was I a fraud? I felt really alone. And I have found that these are the emotions that are shared by many attributed people.
Misattributed.
Yeah, misattributed people.
Yes.
No matter what the reason is, that they might be misattributed. Late discovery, adoption, certainly a leading cause.
Right.
You could be the product of an extramarital affair or a one-night stand, or maybe Aunt Martha raised you. You thought she was mom, but really Cousin Mary was mom.
Right.
That happens in families today.
Absolutely. And DNA is kind of breaking that all wide open, isn't it?
Sure is.
Okay, so that happened. Mom spilled the beans, and what happened next?
Well, I think Muhammad Ali said something like, "It's not the marathon that wears you out; it's the stone in your shoe." This was really a disruptive, traumatic thing. And at the time, I was in the middle of a marital crisis at the same time. So my wife and my family really encouraged me to go ahead and maybe seek a little bit of therapy on this.
Yeah.
And that was a hard thing for me to come to grips with, too. I subscribed to what I had seen in both the boardroom as well as in the war room. Well, you're weak and maybe not fit for command if you need that kind of help. Well, I was a CEO, but I needed some help. So I very quietly sought some therapy. And I went through a few different therapists before I found the right one that had some element of trauma in his background and experience. And what I learned is that I had 3 stones in my shoe because new trauma, this identity trauma, oftentimes rekindles old trauma thought long past.
Absolutely.
And I had trauma from my childhood. My dad committed suicide when I was 16 after 4 years of being ill. Old school Italian family. It was like, keep it quiet, don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
It might show over onto us, spill over onto us. It's a flaw, don't bring it out.
Yeah.
So, I grew up feeling inadequate and flawed too.
Yeah.
And kept that very quiet. And then the whole Vietnam experience created some PTSD that I just did not deal with. And of course, a returning veteran back in 1970 or whatever was soon realized not to talk about it because society wasn't really welcoming.
Right.
So I just kind of sucked it up.
Ugh. Yeah.
So I had 3 stones in my shoe. And,
and the third one was what broke the camel's back.
Yeah, well, my therapist said, "Congratulations, son, you hit a trifecta." So I had to deal with not 1, not 2, but really all 3 with this.
Absolutely.
And then there was the rage of genealogical bewilderment that was in there too. With a pair of 1960s psychologists coined that term, studying the adopted who had difficulty with their sense of belonging.
That's one of my favorite terms.
Yeah, and in the old days, they called donor insemination semi-adopted. So when I was semi-adopted, I had that same rage, just a rage of genealogical bewilderment.
Yeah.
And make no mistake, it was a rage. And that just fueled my research. That was met with a lot of secrecy and misinformation as well. My mom gave me a couple of clues, the name of the doctor, the Harvard clinician, his address, and she misremembered the details, the doctor's name, the address, no such doctor, no such address.
Right.
So I use the old gumshoe methods of research, library research between Boston Public Library and the Harvard Medical School Library. The internet was in its infancy. Google was 3 years away from being founded. And DNA wasn't even in the vernacular. It was 12 years away from being discovered or announced by 23andMe. To not stand still, I had to do something. So I just decided I would research the living daylights out of the very science that enabled my creation to begin with. And I took a look at it, Julie, from actually biblical references right through to today.
You sure did. I love that part of the book. I mean,
Thank you.
I told you before, I learned things that I've never known before. I mean, I've touched on the history of, IVF and donor conception and stuff like that before, but you really overturned some rocks I never knew about.
Well, thanks for that.
And like the whole second part of the book focuses on that, right?
Yeah, it does. Well, when I was out originally looking for a publisher, I heard from a variety that, a memoir is a tough space.
Yeah.
If your name were John Bon Jovi, not Peter J. Bonney, you'd have a winner here. So we're really interested in your story. Why don't you write this as a tell-all expose?
Uh-huh.
And I didn't want to write a tell-all expose. I wanted to write a tell-all expose from the lens of somebody who was donor conceived, who experienced all of that disruption and all of that genealogic bewilderment, all of that trauma.
Right.
That to me was a story. There were already books out there that were memoirs, and there's certainly dry history books. But I wanted to combine the two.
Yeah.
And I found a publisher to enable me to do that.
You spent most of the 90s and the early aughts, yes, just doing the research?
I was back and forth from late 95 until really 2005. I did a good deal of research.
Okay.
I found that in the early days, medical students were primarily the source of anonymous sperm donations. So when I was going to the Harvard Library, I went through the alumni list of Harvard Medical School and put into my briefcase the names, the lists of graduates, 1945, 46, 47, and 48. I walked around with that for years, and I was convinced that my donor was in that list somewhere.
One of those names. How many were there? Do you remember?
400 maybe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So my research was really in two different waves. That first wave covered the early beginnings of AI through the time of my conception, from the waning up to the waning days of World War II. And then the second wave, once I discovered the source of my seed, I relied more heavily upon the internet as a research tool. And then I covered the evolution of assisted reproductive technology, really from World War II to the present day.
Right.
And that's where the book really hatched itself. When I exposed what I had learned to a close friend, his comment was, Pete, I used to breed Rottweilers, and what you're telling me, I can tell you that breeding puppies has more regulatory oversight than the conception of human beings.
Yes.
So I thought, well, this could be a compelling book. And was it Toni Morrison's old quote that if you're trying to find a book and you can't find it, maybe you should write it.
Write it, yes.
So that's how it came to be.
Okay.
I took a venture capital role in 2005, and I learned a lot more about the life sciences world than I had ever learned. I was more of a information technology guy. And put together an advisory board at my company for life sciences. And boy, they were abuzz at the end of 2007 about this company who announced the DNA analysis over the internet service, 23andMe.
Right.
And they thought, well, this is going to be a real thrust to personalized medicine. This is just a huge, huge breakthrough. Treatment medically to be specific to your protein content in your body as opposed to anything else. So that was like a breakthrough for me. They didn't realize they were breaking through something for me because I was not upfront with anyone about my my discovery.
Right.
I kept that in a very close circle of friends and family.
Okay.
So in early 2008, Time magazine declared that 23andMe was the invention of the year. And I was one of the early customers. They call it the lunatic fringe that signed up to, that's what they did say in high technology. A new customer of a new technology is one of the lunatics. So I was the lunatic fringe.
Okay.
For $999,
Wow.
list price, in early 2008, I spit into the 23andMe vial, and then 2 months later, I waited for my results, and bang, there they were. I wasn't Northern Italian. I was English, French, and a sliver of Scandinavian on my paternal side. They had some health details that looked like my health history was fairly clean.
Okay, that's where we are leaving off. The second half of this conversation will be on episode 705.
Sounds great. I am Richard Castle, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I write for musical theater, and I'm also what else am I? I'm a pianist, and you can go to richardcastle.com to see everything I do about that, or you could go to that new website I just built, lovestingsmusical.com.
Yes.
And see that, everything that I was talking about for the last several years.
And you're also a delightful humorist.
Oh, thank you. I didn't put that on the site. I figured that was
Humorist.
too much.
Yeah, that'd be weird to call yourself a humorist.
A humorist, right? You could also follow me on Twitter or Instagram or on at Castle Songs.
I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. You can find me on all the socials. You can find CutOff Jeans on all the socials. You can email me directly if you like, julesjackson@cutoffjeans.com, or you can go to the website and find all things CutOff Jeans and read some of the testimonials, read some of my blogs.
You know, Julie, we just discovered on this podcast that the truth is not on the internet. Where is it?
The truth is in your jeans.